who played with it. There were other records that were being played backward where you would hear something. Stairway to Heaven is a great example of that.
Right.
It seems to me it's I Love You, Satan is what you can hear in the lyric. But you know, that record is about 6.5 minutes long. I'll bet you can also hear buy encyclopedias if you listen, you know, or use Ray-Ban or whatever. It's all accidental, except when it's used for play. And you know, you put a speaker under your pillow and try to learn French.
You're not going to do it.
No.
Yeah.
Forward. And so I don't think the backmasking thing is going to work backwards. So that was my take on that.
Yeah, it's just pretty interesting how we react to things, though. I mean, it's instead of building bridges, we build walls.
Yes.
And that seems to be the place where religion has been at times, is built. So when is a wall appropriate and when is a bridge appropriate?
Yeah.
I mean, these are good questions that we need to struggle with as far as the church is concerned.
I didn't burn albums,
Right.
but I did encourage people to listen, and if what the song is saying is antithetical to your belief system, then maybe you need to pay some attention to the lyric and to understand what's behind it.
And perhaps one of the problems, like my wife is an English teacher, and so when she's teaching Shakespeare, there's a lot of biblical allusions in Shakespeare,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of theology that goes on, even in. We were talking last night about the Great Gatsby. God is in Great Gatsby, but it's an impersonal, immovable sign that only has eyes, and those eyes are set to judge you. And you're in the Valley of Ashes, and this week we celebrate Ash Wednesday, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes up with that: ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
And there's at my church, I was talking about Billy Joel's song from the Turnstiles album called "I've Loved These Days."
Right.
And that song is about, this is my life and I love it, but I have to change, but man, I've loved these days.
Right.
And it's everything from chandeliers and caviar and Cabernet and fine cocaine is sung about in the song.
Right.
But I have to change, but I've loved these days. That's a Lenten song.
It is. And then you take the song and you talk about the general search that we have as human beings, and what we're nostalgic about, what we're hungry for, what we're looking forward to. You know, all these things tend to come up inside of the music, right?
Yes.
It's not just about, like, when they were talking about rock and roll to us, it all had to do with sex, drugs, all that kind of stuff. But if you listen beneath it all, there's a general hunger that people have, and at that point you can say, well, you know, this is where the gospel fits in. This is where our theology takes some root and has some reality to it, right?
Yeah. We were talking about the kinds of music and the changes in this 50 years, the 22 years that the program ran. You get into the 80s where you have the storytellers,
right?
And they're telling about their search. And I brought with me, and this is probably going to break all kinds of legal stuff by reading a poem, Netherlands by Dan Fogelberg.
Right.
One of the great storytellers. And Billy Joel, every time he came out with an album, every time Earth, Wind & Fire came out with an album, every time Dan Fogelberg, I wrote a show about it, you know. High on this mountain, the clouds down below, I'm feeling so strong and alive. From this rocky perch, I'll continue to search for the wind, the snow, and the sky. I want a lover, I want some friends, I want to live in the sun, I want to do all the things that I've never have done. And of course, he died young.
Right, right.
At the end, it says, once in a vision, I came on some woods and stood at a fork in the road. My choices were clear, yet I froze with the fear of not knowing which way to go. One road was simple acceptance of life. The other road offered sweet peace. When I made my decision, my vision became my release. And the song ends.
Right.
And now you don't know which road he took.
Right.
But let's talk about those two roads. So in the youth group, you kids talk about simple acceptance of life. What does that mean? And you kids talk about sweet peace. What does that mean?
Right.
And of course, we're talking about music now that's 30 years old, you know. But what song now will your youth group talk about? Mm-hmm. What are the messages in the music today? You can't ignore it. It's everywhere.
Well, and the same themes that were prevalent within music, and I find it to to be true now when I'm listening to my kids' albums. I mean, there was this one rap song called "Gangster's Paradise" that my son played for me once, and it says, "I walk through the valley of the shadow of death."
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it has that Psalm 23 imagery going through it, and you can tell that there's a hunger for something more than the conflict that this man is in.
Yeah.
You know, he needs to hit the green pastures, but he doesn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And we, you know, and this becomes a story that the church can interact with, right? So how do we lead people to the green pasture, to the place where, or even to the place where they're not so afraid of the valley of the shadow of death?
Yeah.
Because it's not the end of the story. So, you know, how do we get to that point where instead of reacting to the music, we engage it, and we ask the questions of our theology. We ask our culture the questions. So even movie clips. There's on Christian Century, it's called Technicolor Jesus.
Yes.
Look it up sometime. But it's all about using movies and interacting with movies in the church. And how do we do that? And you know, it's just
another great resource for movies is Ed McNulty.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of his website now, but if you Google Ed McNulty movies, you'll get his reviews. And they're to lead church folk to engage in film the way I hope people are still leading youth to engage with the music culture. Used to be when I would write my shows, I'd have to listen to every cut and try to write down the lyrics. And I was so blessed when somebody actually put the album notes, you know, on the thing. And nowadays you go to the internet, and the lyrics of all the songs are there.
Right.
Terribly illegal, probably, but they're all there. And kudos to you for listening to your son's music. I used to use that as an illustration that a kid the parent would say, "Turn it down,"
right,
and the kid could say, "Well, come and listen to it." And so you sit down and you look at the things together, and mom could say, "That's really embarrassing to me that you're listening to that. But tell me why you like that."
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because Eminem, even, you know, in a lot of this music, there's, you know, it is filthy. I mean, the lyrics, it's misogynistic. There's an awful lot of stuff in it that you look at and you go, there's something wrong with it.
Oh, it's off-putting.
It's off-putting. But in order to really engage your kids, to engage the culture that they live in, you have to begin listening, you know, and then from there enter into a discussion where you can let them know, you know, where you are in this whole thing.
A lot of this is listening. There used to be something called television awareness training, where we taught people to watch TV, and I talked about rock music, and somebody said, "No, you're so concerned about music and TV. What is your teenage daughter, what is she reading?"
Right.
I had no idea. But it was a good challenge. You know, that was from a Virginia Commonwealth University professor who said, "So your daughter reads every night before she goes to bed instead of watching TV. What's she reading?" Pay attention. You know, we parents had to pay attention. My kids both turned out really great. You know, I think it was the Moody Blues that did it.
Moody Blues did it. Well, yeah, of course they would.
Yeah.
So Nights in White Satin.
Right.
That would have helped a lot.
I'm just a singer in a rock and roll band.
I'm just a singer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you know, Jeff, this has been really enjoyable talking with you about, and I'm sure that there are other subject matter that can emerge from this. I mean, we probably could do an entire show on the search, for instance.
Yeah. Yes.
And that'd be a great thing for us to do at some point, just to ask, what are people looking for?
Yeah.
But one thing that they did find, at least in your show, was a listening ear and a person who engaged them.
I so enjoyed it too, and it's great to still be a part of this in some way.
Well, and it's great to have you on Encounter, and I'm so pleased that you're a host and still part of the Celebrating Media Ministry.
Yeah, thank you for letting me do this today.
And for all of you who are watching us today, I hope you have a great Sunday.
Anger and determination married to the beat of Genesis on Celebration Rock for a Sunday. He looks around and diagnoses the problem. Too many people making too many problems, and not much love to go around. Then comes an honest admission. This is the world we live in.